Cheers. Hey, folks. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Peter. As you said, I'm Michael Kincaid. I'm from ecentricarts. You can find me on Twitter at @meandmyrobot. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at ecentricarts. We're a full-service digital agency up in Toronto, Canada, in the Great White North. Please come and visit. It's a fantastic place. We've also recently had a little bit of a beachhead in Ireland. Not self-interested at all to have anything set up in Ireland for me to fly home and see my mum, but we're also there as well. And I'm also a Kentico MVP, so try to be active in the community. If you have any questions on anything I'm presenting today, then by all means come up or catch me afterwards. So, the cloud, which we're here to talk about. I promise there is an otter somewhere in this. The title was utterly amazing. What I'm going to look at today is two things. First of all, I'm going to look at our first experience at ecentricarts with Kentico Cloud. And the second thing I'm going to look at as well is really exploring some of the new opportunities with a headless CMS. So as a CTO, what really excited me about the announcement last year about Kentico moving into a content-first headless CMS. So I was excited last year whenever it was announced. Questions as well, that probably won't happen. Our team was also super excited. We've been using Kentico now for about 9 years. Love the platform, love the product for all different types of projects, whether or not it's content, digital marketing, e-commerce. Really exciting. To hear that Kentico were coming out with a new platform, really, we were like, can't wait to use it. Where can we use it? Looking at our wish list, you might not be able to see it. Kind of went, okay, so headless CMS, this is going to be new, something new for us to work with. What would our clients need from a platform for us to use it on their sites? Definitely content modeling's got to be great, it's got to be fantastic. Has to be intuitive relationship building in terms of that content. Some clients have really dense domains, lots of different types of content, want to be able to relate those together. A lot of field types to be able to model the content, things like required fields, images, asset library. Being from Canada, though, one of the things we really need, and I'm super excited about what Andre said today, is multilingual support. Everything we do is in 2 national languages of English and French. So really excited in November, really want to use the platform, but was unsure of what the best way to do it. How can we use Kentico Cloud? Because we really want to. We're like this for like a month and a half, even over Christmas. So we started thinking about, well, what types of things do we have going on in the studio? And we had quite a few internal initiatives that we've been thinking about, sort of digital marketing things for ecentricarts. And early in the year, one of the first things that we were thinking about, some sort of desired outcomes we wanted to do something that was going to really speak directly to one of our target markets, which is not-for-profit. We've done a few things for B2B and e-com, but we really felt it was needed to kind of reach out to not-for-profit. So how do we do that? In doing that, though, we also wanted something that was a bit more original than yet another landing page. Not that there's anything wrong with landing pages, they can be effective, but it can get a little bit dry, a little bit dull. And then finally, something that was going to be driven by content rather than just a place for it to live. But often whenever you think of things like internal initiatives, you're always thinking about the cool new tech and the new thing that you can do or you can develop, rather than being like, well, really it's about the message, it's about the outcome that we're trying to achieve. So we looked at those 3 things. Things started to kind of resonate with us. There was Speak, something a bit more original. You probably guess where I'm going to. Chatbot. We're like, right. You can hardly see it there. It says chatbot. She's not just doing this to a large amount of red floaty things. Let's try to build something which isn't strictly just a website, that we can use a headless CMS to model and store the content and actually get to play with Kentico before we can use it with a client's project. And this is where the otter comes in. So our chatbot, which is called Autobot, we developed over the past sort of couple of months on and off. It's an internal project, so it's always not the thing that you're always looking at. Client work comes first. But just to run you through sort of the development of it, and then we'll get into the team's review of using Kentico Cloud for this project. Obviously, content was very much front and center at the very beginning because, again, it's a chatbot. It's all about the conversation that we're going to have with the user. So we had modeled out different flows, the responses, where we're going to start to track or capture the activity that users are doing. Whilst we were doing that, we were also designing in terms of how it was going to look, as many otter GIFs as possible on different devices, so just on desktop, on mobile, and all this activity was happening at the same time as content development was happening. And then just to jump straight to the sort of the end result, it might be a bit small here, but here we have our otter. He comes in, he starts to lift content from Kentico Cloud, and it runs through a conversation. You can see we've got actions. User can say what it is they want to do. If you come back to the site, then we're doing things like we recognize that you've been here before. We have different messaging. Something we want to do a bit more with this is do more personalization in terms of the experience. But again, like any chat, you've got conversation, you've got different actions, and the user can go through and with this find different assets related to not-for-profit trends and GIFs, many, many, many GIFs. So in terms of modeling in Kentico CMS, you can see here we've got things like we've got our little chat avatar, Otto. We have obviously the conversation. We've got the actions. So right at the very beginning of this initiative, our content strategist and content team were going into Kentico Cloud and starting to structure out exactly how this would be represented. So looking at it, we knew this was something that we wanted to develop not just for ourselves, but for clients. So we came up with our first entity, our content type, which is a profile. So our profile is our otter, but for other clients, it could be something else or other initiatives that we were doing. We have this idea of conversation that's happening. We've got the action as well. So in terms of modeling that in Kentico, what we did was we grouped our conversations and actions in a container, and then an action could lead to another group of conversations, and again, and you could have branching as well. So in Kentico, if we have a look, it might be a bit small, apologies. You see that we've got our different content items, but if we actually have a look at our inventory, we have all of our different content types. So we've got different types of actions, like an external link, text input. We've got our containers for things like a conversation or a random conversation. And what was interesting was that when we started using this, a lot of the functionality that you're seeing here wasn't actually available in Kentico Cloud. But again, as part of their process, their more iterative agile process, they release features regularly. So it was quite interesting to see some of the challenges that our team had at the beginning were resolved, within a couple of weeks or within a month with the updates that were happening. So it's been great to see. So again, things like being able to have modular content and say things like whether or not a field is required or not, and being able to sort of specify the content types that are allowed within the content when you're building it out. We've got our profile. So again, so we can have multiple different types of chatbots as well. So modeling was quite easy to do in Kentico. If we continue the conversation, again, just an excuse to get a kitten in there. You see we've got different actions, and if we have a look at terms of actually entering in the content into our chatbot, so we have this video has also spiked in popularity. Has your workplace experimented with video before? And then yes, no, or not sure. So going into Kentico, again, you can filter based on your different content types. So here's our container, or I can also do a search specifically on, say, a text like spiked, and I can find the container for this conversation, which has the content and it has the 3 actions. One of the nice things about entering in content within Kentico Cloud is the ability to kind of bounce around. So I can jump into one of these actions and I can see how it's set up and I can edit it there. I can jump through again into another conversation and see the 3 different actions there. So it's easy to kind of navigate around your content. It's also easy to extend it. So here we've got our yes, nope, not sure actions. What we can do is we can go in and we can add content. And this was something that, again, was an update that was done whilst we were developing. So this create new assign wasn't there initially, and it was driving our content people mental because they had to create items and then create items and then link the items together. And there's a lot of items in chats, a lot of different actions that's happening. So I remember Jen was going, this is driving me nuts. And then I'd seen some preview, the feature came out and she's like, oh, thank goodness. Where was that 2 weeks ago? But it's here now. So again, the ability to create new directly from within an item of content, select the content type and go in and populate the information is a really great feature to have. So I can add a new action to this. So just say go to Google. Again, apologies, it's a bit small. Add in the address. You all know it. Say I want to open up in a new window. And then whenever I go back into the parent object, you'll see it's not published. But another cool feature is that whenever I'm here in this container, whenever I publish this content item, so I'll just move this into published, it'll publish this content item and also the child item as well, which is great. So now whenever I go back, and again, just an excuse to show the kitten, it'll be updated, and yes, you've guessed it, we'll have another action for the user, and they can go off. And this could have linked to a different part of the conversation. So in terms of our stack, again, quite a simple chat item or application, but really it was a good first sort of foray into Kentico Cloud. And one of the things we liked about it was that in comparison to sort of the main platform, because again, you keep hearing it's technology agnostic, or there's a lot more freedom with it being API first, we could use different parts of frameworks and technologies that we weren't currently using. So again, Kentico Cloud was at the beginning of our stack. It was storing our content. We used .NET Core on the server side, and Redux and React is something we've been using a lot in the studio, so we brought that in as well. .NET Core is new though. In terms of some of the benefits of that, things like React and Redux have great tooling, which really helps developers move very quickly. So here we've got our little Redux Chrome developer tool extension, where we can go in and we can have a look at the object. We can come in and look at state of the information that we have on the client side, look at conversations, look at actions, and do things that are really very language specific. But again, one of the benefits of using the tool is how fast you can use different tools like this. Go through the slider, browse around. So in terms of the review, was it this? Sorry. This is Lucas. He was one of the main developers on the project. Lucas is one of those full stack unicorns that is amazing .NET developer and writes JavaScript in a fantastic way. React, Redux, Node, you name it. So what did Lucas think? And we'll see if this is loud enough. Everyone be quiet. Hey Lucas, so what do you feel the advantages are of using a headless CMS? And did it change anything about how you approach development?
With Kentico Cloud, it's more of a content-first approach. Developers get to develop the website or web application in various tools, various languages. Also, it's quicker to set up the build because we don't have to install the build locally.
Right.
We don't have to install hotfixes. Everything is maintained by Kentico in the cloud. And then future hotfixes is all maintained by Kentico, so we only have to worry about what we're building rather than the infrastructure that we need to build at the back.
So in case you didn't hear that, overall, big thumbs up from the developers who were using it. API first, welcome 2017. We're using a lot of API first tools, so it's great to see Kentico using the same approach. Content first, which is something I never thought I'd hear developers say was a good thing, but very much noticeable, and we'll get into why the benefits of content first, or at least what the team felt the benefits were. Quick setup and super fast to debug. So as mentioned previously, the full, powerful Kentico CMS can sometimes be a bit slow in certain scenarios to debug, but certainly using something like the cloud, it's your own stack, it's your own code to maintain, and you can approach that in whatever way you feel is best to get the best performance and productivity from development. Don't have to worry about the platform, just my code. So again, we're not installing Kentico. We're not during the development cycle hotfixing or updating or worrying about whether or not there's going to be a large release that we're going to have to do a big code update on. So that's certainly a benefit. And more freedom around frameworks, which I'll get into as well. So next I wanted to find out what our content team felt. So I went and talked to Jen, who's a content strategist at ecentricarts. Hi Jen. So was it easy to model content in Kentico Cloud?
It was, yeah. It was a pretty user-friendly and fast process. But features that you definitely want the developers to incorporate into it is the ability to view a sitemap and previews as well. That's a really helpful aspect.
Yep, so in terms of modeling content, other feedback, very fast interface. There was no waiting around for something to load whilst you're trying to very quickly put in content. And again, being able to move around that content and build relationships. So relationship building was at first a bit annoying when that create new assign wasn't there, but now it's super easy, very fast. And definitely one thing we find, which I think we do a website for a client with Kentico Cloud, is make sure you use the preview feature. Because although the platform is headless, we as people aren't, and still want to be able to quickly go through, make content, and then have a look at that content in the specific channel that we happen to be targeting. And then also help editors out in terms of sometimes that content repository can be a lot of different types of content in there. So if you're in a website, use sitemap, use things like taxonomy, give them multiple ways of being able to navigate and find that content that they want to update. Finally, I talked to our Director of Digital Strategy, Anne. Hi, Anne.
Hi.
Hello. So what do you feel for the team were the advantages of using a headless CMS like Kentico Cloud?
I think the primary advantage was it allowed the team to hit the ground running. So as soon as we came to our concept right away, from the brainstorming session, our developer was already thinking in his head, I think, of how to develop this thing. Mm-hmm. Our content strategist right away was thinking about the different paths that the content could potentially take. She went back and user flowed them all out. And then our designer was working in parallel as well. So all three were working very collaboratively the entire time. At a certain point, Lucas had a prototype ready, had it ready for content entry pretty quickly, and it was very, very easy for everyone involved.
Cool. So in terms of like an overall team review, things that seem to resonate, that idea of being able to hit the ground running, very, very quickly be able to get stuff together, build, create, get some code, and just sort of iterate and see what's what was there in comparison to going to the senior developer and getting them to set up the infrastructure and the builds and getting all that in play. Really, it's just stick in some content, write some code, and start playing around with it. That means it's very, very quick to prototype, and you can do more prototypes, you can ideate, you can get feedback a lot sooner. And this one, development and content strategy working more collaboratively, which we'll get back to. Having real content up front, as you all know, really does help expose content challenges, especially whenever you work with multiple different types of languages. And you can have exemplar content whilst you're developing, whilst you're making a site, but somewhere along the lines, that exemplar content is like, it's wishful thinking. So getting real content in earlier could definitely be a benefit. And then, obviously, from our team, hurry up and make it multilingual, which I know you guys are doing, but come on, hurry up. The one thing that jumped out to me, though, and I think from some of the presentations that we've had earlier today and some of the other blog posts, was really this idea of development and content strategy sort of working more collaboratively. Now, at ecentricarts, we run Agile, so about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we kind of moved from doing the very traditional way of building sites to trying to actually build sites out in a more iterative approach. Really, the idea being that digital projects are complex, and getting more feedback and more iterations as possible, and really getting to understand what resonates with users leads to better outcomes for our clients. So we work in sprints, we deliver at the end of every sprint, and every now and again you'll get maybe an actual public release. They might be internal. So the idea is that we're structured as sort of 5 dedicated agile teams, and each team needs to be fully cross-functional. So you'll find creatives, developers, QA, but we also have content strategists, and you've also got the client or their content editor group, and they're not always part of that sort of dedicated team. Content strategists might be for a while, but they don't get to play in those sort of early sprints. And a lot of that is down really to the use of traditional CMS. And now some of this might be just because it's what we're used to. Some of this you can still do with the traditional CMS. You just got to think about it a little bit differently. But quite often you get this modeling part at the beginning, and then the real content comes in whenever you've got enough that people can come in and actually start to populate the website with actual real content. But what the team found and what we want to then bring to a client project and see whether or not this actually will resonate is that really with this headless CMS first approach, or rather content first approach, really bringing content and focusing on it really upfront at the beginning, was that you could kind of hopefully break things down into each sprint would have some modeling with real content, some modeling with real content as we take features on, going through from sprint to sprint. So again, it's something that's a little bit it's an idea right now. We'll see whether or not it actually comes to reality. But certainly, what we noticed using the headless CMS and using Kentico Cloud was that like Jen wasn't sitting back, our content strategist, waiting for there to, for a couple of weeks or a month for there to be something for her to go in and start to play with. She was in those early meetings with our team, coming up with different content scenarios. The team was using that. We were modeling very, very quickly in Kentico Cloud. And if something didn't work, we just tear it down and we create something else. It was just a lot more quick. And because it's faster, you have a tendency to kind of iterate more and to play around with stuff a bit more than, say, in a more monolithic CMS, trying to build out sort of in a more traditional approach. So with that in mind, content strategy comes in, and hopefully you get the client in as well. So that's the first case study. That's really our first experience with Kentico Cloud. Now that we know the multilingual's coming out, Keith and I have already been talking. We've got a few other client projects that we're really, really hoping we can use it on for a variety of reasons. First reason being that one thing that we're thinking about right now is a project that it's a website and also mobile apps as well. So it falls into that category if it's multi-channel. And if it's multi-channel, certainly I think something like Kentico Cloud makes a lot of sense. So the second case study is really, when I heard Kentico were doing a headless CMS, and I heard those magic words, that it was technology agnostic, I was really, really, really excited. And for many reasons. Like, I love .NET, don't get me wrong, great, but it's not where I started. I kind of fell into .NET. I always have that like imposter syndrome, where other people talk about .NET and I'm like, yeah, that's async, wait, that's great. My background was C++ and JavaScript, which is two really weird things to come together. But I really, really, really love JavaScript. So whenever I heard you were doing a headless CMS, I was like, oh, great, a great excuse to play around with some new technologies. Because this was one of the first diagrams that Kentico had on their website. And I looked at it and I was like, brilliant, I'm going to ignore those. .NET, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's great. PHP, I used to do PHP. I don't anymore. Java, good luck. But these things, these look interesting, shiny and new. Likewise, Keith, close your ears. Sometimes the web's boring. You build one website, it's great, and you get new challenges, but a lot of the times it kind of feels like the same thing. And it's 2017. I want to go here. I want to build, I think that's VR glasses. It kind of looks like underwear. And mobile devices and smart TVs. Like, give me the tech. So I thought to myself, okay, what can I do? And the first thing that jumped into my mind was Alexa, but it's not available in Canada because of the English-French. So then I went online, I had a look, and I thought to myself, right, Google Home Assistant. I'll try this. I'll try to, because we were working with chat, we're working with bots a lot. I'll see how I can bring this together. But not just that, I want to not use anything I've ever used before. I want to just throw out all the tools and the tooling that we have and just see, about what I can do in terms of different technology stacks. So, how do we go about talking to this thing here, which is on the table, which is mute? Nobody say, okay. The first time I brought this in the office, one of the guys walked in and was like, okay, Google, set an alarm for 3 a.m. I was like, no. So, yeah, be careful with these things. So really, much like the chat that I showed earlier, where we had this idea of conversations and actions, whenever it comes to Alexa or Google Home Assistant, it's really the same sort of idea where you have a user who's going to invoke some type of conversation, and that's going to really be an intent that has a trigger. So like, I am interested in finding a recipe with some sorts of ingredients, and then really the whole idea is that this thing is going to fulfill that request. It's going to take the information that I provided to it, try to work out what maybe, or for developer speak, what are the arguments of this intent, and then try to fulfill it. And then once it's got it fulfilled, it'll then respond back to the user and say something like, I'm sorry, Michael, I don't understand your accent. You weren't meant to buy me. I'm not available in Northern Ireland yet. So it'll happen, I'm telling you. So go a bit deeper into sort of the process and then what stack we used on this. Obviously, we've got the user. He's going to talk to an app or a bot or a device. Input methods can be, the keyboard. So a lot of these things, like you'll see Google Home Assistant, it has, you can talk to it on your phone. You can also speak to it here as well. That's then going to pass this on to a language processor. So it'll take your query, I want to know what I can do with these ingredients, and it'll identify the intent. Right, okay, this is what they're looking to do. And then what it'll do with that is it's going to pass it to something to fulfill the intent. And with the demo today, it's going to be through webhooks. And then the fulfillment is going to be done by some type of service. So again, it's this idea of connecting microservices together to provide a solution. So it could be external APIs, could be something you've written to go and talk to a database. And then we go back up the chain. So the information goes to the fulfillment engine, which passes it on to a language processor, which then takes that data and will output it in some form. So it'll speak it, or it'll output the message on screen and provide that to a user. So this is kind of the journey that we're going to do very quickly. So in terms of tooling, I had purchased this, and also there's the Google Assistant as well, which has a web simulator that you can use, which we'll show. In terms of the language processor, and by that it's like, well, how do you actually, because think about it, like you design web interfaces, it's a landing page, it has this part, but designing a conversation, I have this intent, and this intent, find a recipe, well, it's going to have ingredients. So you actually design that part, like you design a web interface, you design a conversation interface. And that can be done in JSON, where there's like a really cool service called API.ai, where you can design your dialogue interface and then take that package and put it onto Alexa or Google Home Assistant or Slack or you name it, wherever. So again, you can push it to multiple channels. Fulfillment, this is where I went hog wild. It's going to build it in node.js. It's going to chuck out everything else. It's going to put my code on GitHub. It's going to use Travis CI for continuous integration, and it's going to deploy it onto Heroku. And who can guess what we used for the services? Where's our recipe information going to live? Brian.
Kentico units.
Oh, so near. Kentico Cloud. Well done. Kentico Cloud. So in this example, Kentico Cloud is going to be where I'm going to keep all of my recipe information for my home chef. Home chef is going to be a little agent that you can talk to whenever you're in the house and you're like, oh, I only have, Kraft dinner and tomatoes, and what can I do with that? Nothing. But it's going to be a little agent that you can talk to, ask it about, what you can make with recipes or with ingredients that you've got. So first of all, we're going to have a look at the language processing, and for this, I could have written out in JSON, but that's not going to demo well. So I used API.ai to give you guys an idea as to how you can design an actual sort of conversation. So this is API.ai. In here, I'm going to call my little agent Home Chef, and I'm going to give it a description. So use me to make your next meal. And what we have whenever we start off, it's got this idea of intents, and the default intent is whenever you say, okay, Google, let me talk to the Home Chef. And you can design that by just going in and you can change what someone will say. You can change what this will respond back. So in this, I'm going to get rid of these, and I'm just going to say, hi, I'm the Home Chef. What are you in the mood for? And this will be our starting intent. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to say something along the lines of, I want a quick hot meal, or what can I do with chicken and tomato? So again, there's this idea of meal types, of protein, of vegetable, of ingredients. And you design that out as entities. So again, I can come in here, I can say, right, I want an entity called dish type, and I'm going to let it know that it's soup, or you might say that that's broth. You can use synonyms, salad, appetizer, that might be starter, main, dinner, entree, so on and so forth. So again, we're kind of giving it a hint as to how someone's going to talk and how it can kind of work out entities and also the arguments that might get passed around. So we have protein, not make you watch all this, add in a bunch of proteins. We've got vegetables, we're going to want somebody to get their 5 a day. They might come in and they might ask for something along the lines of temperature. So whether something is hot, that might be boiling, cold might be freezing. So again, it'll learn off these things that we're providing it. Then I'm going to add in cooking speed, quick, slow. So here we have our entities. We've got cooking speed, dish type, protein, temperature, and vegetable. what's going to happen is that when you talk at this, it's going to try and work out if it can find proteins in vegetables. It's going to send that information to the app that I'm building. And my app's then going to go to Kentico and be like, right, can I find any recipe that's actually going to satisfy what this person's looking for? So I'm going to make another intent, not just the welcome intent, but I'm going to make an intent that represents my recipe recommendation. This is kind of neat. How's a user going to initiate this? Well, they might say things like, what can I do with potatoes and lamb? Whenever I enter that in, it starts to parse out, okay, you said potatoes and lamb. I know by the information that you gave me in the entities that potato is going to be a vegetable and lamb will be a protein. So again, you're kind of designing the interface of your dialogue and letting it know how to actually understand what people are saying. I might say, it's really cold outside. What do you suggest for me to warm up? So again, you'll see it's seen cold as temperature and warm as temperature, but cold doesn't actually relate to the temperature of the food here. So I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to just change this to temperature 1. And just a few more. Do you have a recipe for a quick hot soup? So again, it's found cooking speed, temperature, dish type. I'd like a dessert and I want it now. Again, different parameters. So another cool thing you can do is whenever it calls my service, I want to make sure that I know what the intent is. So I'm giving the action name recipe.recommendation. I also want certain things to be required. So I want you to provide me a vegetable. If you don't, I'm going to ask you what kind of vegetables do you have. I'm also going to want protein. And again, if you don't provide me that, then I'm also going to ask what protein would you like to use. And dish type as well, like whether or not you want breakfast or starter, so on and so forth. So I can make these lists. I can also order them as to which one it asks first. And then finally, there's the idea of fulfillment. When it comes to fulfillment, what we're going to use, you've heard this a few times today, is this concept of a webhook. So what's going to happen, is that whenever this actually receives an intent from me, it's not going to try and fulfill it itself. It's going to package all that information up, and it's going to hit a webhook, which is my app, that then is going to talk to Kentico. So in terms of my app, I was told not to show code, so I'm going to see how much time I've got. And if I have time, you're going to look at code. So here we have GitHub, and on GitHub, this was great. It's nice to have code on GitHub. I've got Travis CI, which lets people know whether or not my build is passing. Travis CI will start up my node, or start up my environment, set up node, run it, and then run the tests. On Heroku, I've got my agent deployed, and in here, in my settings, I've got different config variables, and it's in here that I'm storing my Kentico Cloud API and my project API. I'm not putting it in code and committing that to GitHub because I want that to be private. So my app picks it up from local, but my production environment picks it up from the environment variables here on Heroku. And then I'll just hide these. In terms of my app, I'm on a Mac on Visual Studio Code, which is really neat. I'm using node.js. So I've got different packages coming in. I'm using Express. I've got Mocha and Chai for testing as well. The Travis YM file sets up that the language is Node and different sort of information like the provider Heroku in terms of where I'm deploying it to. And params.js is a local file that has my project information, but I don't actually commit that and check it in. And in the config vars is where I'm actually saying get it from Heroku. So all I've got here is just a server file. And what it's doing is it's just, again, bringing in a few things. So what I've got is this assistant, which is Actions on Google, is an API provided by Google so that you can then work with the intents and the different information that's coming from the device. I've also got my main entry point, which is creating an instance of the assistant, and I've got my recipe agent that's being created here as well. And then my recipe agent really just comes in and creates a class. Well, I've got a class, it's ES6. I create an instance of the assistant, or I get passed that in, and then I just look at the intent in my broadcast response from intent, and then I just go and try to actually provide a recommendation. So again, there could be multiple intents. I only have one at the moment, which is my recipe recommendation intent. And then the recipe recommendation fulfillment class that we have is the one that actually goes and talks to Kentico. So you'll see at the top here, what we've got is we've got a delivery client. So I created a Node.js sort of API for Kentico Cloud, for the delivery client and the migration client as well. So got an instance of that. We also here at the top have our different arguments. So again, I'm expecting from this assistant to get different arguments. Some are mandatory, some are optional. So I've got protein, vegetable, temperature, cooking speed, so on and so forth. So that information is going to be provided to me. And then what my app is going to do is it's going to go and talk to Kentico and get that information. So here we've got our provide recommendation, which is going to call find recipes. And then find recipes is what's going to pass in our different options and arguments to the Kentico API. So basically, it looks at the arguments and works out how it needs to write that up as query parameters to then call Kentico's deliver API. And that's done through the Kentico Cloud classes that were created. So again, up here we've got our Kentico Cloud. So this class is inherited by our delivery client and our migration client. So it provides a lot of sort of common functionality between those two. So things like being able to build up the URL parameters, being able to get the JSON content. Our delivery client, which extends Kentico Cloud, then has things specific to the delivery client like get an item, get items as well. Okay, so finally in Kentico, what we have is we've got all of our recipe information. So you'll see we've got recipes, protein, vegetable, I did a few of these, and I've got a bunch of different recipes that are in here. And if we have a look, say, at one of these recipes, you'll see that I've got the name, I've got a short description, I can create proteins, vegetable. I've also got things like cooking speed, temperature, dish type, all the different information that I'm going to filter the repository of recipe content and provide the information back to our Google Assistant. Things like spicy chicken pasta, different values there. So again, this is the repository of content. It's going to get pulled to this device, but again, I might make a website for this recipe information. I could have a recipe website using the exact same content as what I'm providing to the device as well. So let's go all the way through. A handy thing that you can get whenever you're using Google Home Assistant is they've got a nice little web simulator. So I can run my build locally here, and then I can use a tool like ngrok to go and open up my local build and expose it to the internet through either an HTTPS or HTTP URL. And then I can come back into our API.ai and set my webhook to my local build just for testing. And then if I go to the web simulator, I can actually test out and see how things are working, which is a lifesaver rather than having to go to the device each and every time. So this cool tool will give you sort of like the Google Assistant chat interface where I can come in and I can start to type commands. So if I look and target an actual recipe, so say the simple spicy chicken pasta, it's a quick hot lunch, it's got chicken, it's got tomato, and go back to the simulator, I can initiate the home chef. So let me talk to the home chef.
Sure, here is the test version of Home Chef.
Hi, I'm the home chef. What are you in the mood for?
So I can, knowing that I want to target that recipe, I can say I want a quick hot lunch.
All right, what protein would you like to use?
So now it's asked me what protein do I want to use because it knows it's got quick hot lunch. It can get parameters from that, but it doesn't yet know what the protein is.
What kind of vegetables do you have?
Now it wants to know what type of vegetables do I have. So I say tomato.
How about simple spicy chicken pasta? An easy one-pot dish. Delicious juicy chicken in a tomato sauce with a nice kick. Perfect with pasta and some garlic bread.
And this is the backup in case this doesn't work. But we should probably try to see if this works.
The mic's back on.
Thank you. Okay, Google, let me talk to the home chef.
Sure, here is the test version of Home Chef.
Hi, I'm the home chef. What are you in the mood for?
What can you do with onion and salmon?
What kind of dish do you prefer?
Main.
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 It's always good to have options. Here's what I've got. Grilled salmon with balsamic onion glaze. A glaze featuring balsamic vinegar, garlic, honey, white wine, and Dijon mustard makes baked salmon fillets extraordinary. Next, I found spicy salmon with caramelized onions recipe. I love making this salmon, it's quick, easy, and super yummy.
Liar.
If your guest is a picky eater, then they'll love this recipe.
You have no hands. So again,
The mic is muted.
well done. It worked out what I hadn't told it, and then approached me with questions from the how I designed the interface. The other one that I did yesterday and posted up on Twitter was a different question, but again, it's the same recipe agent.
Okay, Google, let me talk to the home chef.
Sure. Here is the test version of Home Chef.
Hi, I'm the home chef. What are you in the mood for?
I'd like a quick, hot lunch.
Alright, what protein would you like to use?
Chicken,
What kind of vegetables do you have?
tomato,
How about simple spicy chicken pasta? An easy one-pot dish.
So I'm really excited. I have been really excited since November about the opportunities that something like a headless CMS provides. Not only our customers, but us and our development team and our team in general. I think it's really exciting to be liberated, starting as a CTO, to kind of think about, well, let's just pick technologies that are the best technologies possible and be able to bring in different things into our stack. And having a headless CMS certainly provides us the ability to do that. And it's been slow going, but we're starting to see other channels have traction, and it is going to happen, and there will be opportunities there. Certainly, in the United Kingdom, the Alexa's taken off quite a lot. It's starting to get very, very popular. And this idea, this promise of being able to have, content in one place and push it out to multiple channels is beginning to happen. So it's very exciting being able to have something like Kentico Cloud as being part of that solution, as being something that will actually be able to be a good place to store your content. So thank you very much for your time today. I'm an MVP. I do a bunch of videos on YouTube on a variety of different topics. So if you want to go in, check them out, get my view count up. Come on, please. Can't just be my mum. If you're interested, I'm at Me and My Robots, and also please come and check us out at ecentricarts.com as well. Cheers. Thank you.